Hello everyone, welcome to today's video on BEGC 172 about language and linguistics. Today we'll be discussing about questions that are really important keeping in mind your June term and examinations. Please go through the video completely so that you can understand the topic. If you liked our video today, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. In case you want any guest papers related to the topic, you can always visit our website shop.hindustanknowledge.com where you can just enter the codes of the topic or the papers where you will be getting the guest papers. Some papers are available both in Hindi and English. You can visit the website, you can buy the guest papers. If you face any issue on our website, you can just give us a call on the mentioned number. So let's begin. So we'll be starting with the first question. Explain the concept of onomatopoeia with suitable examples. Onomatopoeia is a figure of speech in which words are formed by imitating the natural sounds made by people, animals, objects or actions. In simple words, onomatopoeia means sound words, words that sound like what they describe. These words help readers and listeners imagine sounds clearly, making language more lively and interesting. So imagine a bell is ringing, ding dong. There's a dog which is barking, woof woof. A clock, you can hear a clock like tick tock. So these are some of the examples of onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is when words imitate real life sounds. Instead of describing a sound in a long sentence, we use a word that sounds exactly like the sound itself. So onomatopoeia is commonly used in poems, stories, comics, advertisements and in everyday speech as well. So why it is used? It adds beauty and helps express feelings, actions and even situations more effectively. So explanation of onomatopoeia. So if I have to explain what onomatopoeia means, when we hear a sound in real life and use a word that copies or closely resembles the sound, it is called as onomatopoeia. For example, when a bell rings, we often say it goes ding dong. The word ding dong sounds like the actual ringing of the bell. Similarly, when a dog makes a sound, we say it barks. Or when a cat makes a sound, we say it mews. These words help readers understand what is happening without long descriptions. Instead of saying the door closed loudly, we can say the door closed with a bang. So why these onomatopoeia is used? These are the sounds which make the language more lively, expressive and fun. Maybe that is why they are usually used in poems, comics, stories or even advertisements. You may have also seen words like bam, whoosh, pow and all this in comics. That's onomatopoeia which creates excitement, action and also some kind of curiosity. So if we see the examples of onomatopoeia, we can see the examples of animal sounds. A dog barks woof woof, a cat mews, a cow moos, a lion roars. Also we can see it in the objects like a clock goes tick tock, a bell rings ding dong, the fireworks go boom, the glass breaking makes a crash. So if you have to see human and action sounds like the sound of clap, hands clapping making a clap, someone knocking the door like knock knock, water dripping goes drip drip, a gunshot sounds bang. So as we have already discussed, onomatopoeia is pow, zap, bam, whoosh, all this in literature and comics. So what is the importance of onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia makes language more colorful and expressive. It helps readers imagine sounds and scenes clearly. It is especially useful for children as it makes learning language fun and simple. Writers use it to bring life to their writing and make descriptions more realistic. This point is important. So if you have to conclude what onomatopoeia means, Onomatopoeia is an important figure of speech that uses sound imitating words to make language vivid and interesting. By copying real life sounds, it helps readers hear, feel, and imagine what is happening, making communication clearer and enjoyable. So, onomatopoeia is an important figure of speech. Remember this. Some other figures of speech examples can be a simile, metaphor. These are some of the figure of speeches. Like that only, even onomatopoeia is a figure of speech. So, basically what we can understand is onomatopoeia helps us not just to read the language, but almost hear the language. That is the beauty of onomatopoeia. So, let's go through the next question. How can sentences be transformed into negative and interrogative ones? Explain by giving suitable examples. So, what is interrogative? Interrogative means questioning, interrogation, that is interrogative sentences. In English, we can change a sentence into negative or interrogative form to express denial or to ask questions, as we have already discussed. So, denial and ask questions are the keywords for this answer. So, first we'll understand what is a negative sentence. Negative sentence is used to show something is not true or does not happen. To make a sentence negative, we usually add not after the helping verb like is, am, are, was, were, have, has, will, do. Example, she is reading a book. So this is a positive example. So what is the negative example of this? She is not reading the book. That is the negative example of this. Or they play football. So what is the negative of this? They do not play football. So can you see the word not, which is used after the helping verb, that is and do? So this is an example of negative sentences. If there is no helping verb, we usually use do, does, or did. So remember this. Okay. So what is an interrogative sentence? Interrogative sentence is used to ask a question. To make sentence interrogative, we usually move the helping verb to the beginning of the sentences. For example, he is watching TV. That is a positive sentence. When it comes to interrogative, is he watching TV? There's a question mark over here. Remember this. Interrogative means questioning. So when you are using an interrogative sentence, it is important that you always use a question mark. One more example, they go to school. In interrogative sentences, it can become do they go to school? Question mark. So if there is no helping verb, similarly, we use do, does, or did at the beginning of this. So we can also combine both of them, interrogative sentence and the negative sentence, and those sentences make something called as the combined idea. What is combined? Combined means to join. Some sentences can be both negative and interrogative. For example, she likes ice cream. So what does the negative become? She does not like ice cream, as we have already discussed. So when it comes to interrogative, does she like ice cream? It's a question. Negative interrogative is, does she not like ice cream? Can you see the difference here? Here, positively, we are telling that she likes ice cream. Negative, we are directly telling that she does not like ice cream. And interrogative, we are questioning whether she likes ice cream. In negative interrogative, it is a blend of both of them. We are asking, does she not like ice cream? So, does she not is used together. Here, in interrogative, does comes, there is no not. And in negative, there is actually a pronoun in the beginning. But in negative interrogation, we are using both interrogative in the beginning and also she not in the continuation of the sentence. Simple rules but very powerful in English grammar. These are it may sound simple, but this simple is very, very powerful in the English language learning. Okay. So next question is, critically analyze the definitions of language and discuss its function. So what is basically a language? Language is a system of communication used by humans to express thoughts, feelings and ideas. Different scholars have defined it in various ways. According to Bloomfield, language is a set of habits, speech used by a community. This focuses on the social aspect of language. According to Hockett, he defines it as a system of arbitrary vocal symbols used for human communications. So these definitions has to be remembered so that you can point these out in your examination also. The more quotes you add to your answers, the more enhanced it becomes. So what is Hockett telling? It is a symbol of arbitrary vocal symbols used for human communication. So what is it highlighting? It highlights the symbolic and the vocal nature of language. According to Saucer, he sees language as a structured system of signs, emphasizing its rules and structure. So different scholars have different ways of explaining what a language is. So what does this actually tell us? That these definitions shows that language is not just words, it is a complex system with rules, symbols and social use. Some definitions focus on communication as we've already seen, others will focus on structure or the habit. But critically, if we see, there's no single definition that covers all the aspects. Like for example, if we see Bloomfield's definition, he ignores the written language, while Hockett, he focuses only on the vocal symbols, missing gestures or the sign language. So what is the function of language? So the primary reason of language is to serve the purpose of communication, correct? So we'll see some of the functions of the language now. So the first function is communicative function. As I've already discussed, what is communication? The way we share our ideas, the way we share our informations with others. That is communication or communicative function. The second one is expressive function. Expressive means how we express our feelings, moods, or even the personal experience with others. How we express ourselves is the expressive function. Cognitive function, which involves your cognition, that is your higher mental processes like thinking, reasoning, understanding the world, how we see the world, how we understand the world. And the social function, that is language help us to build relationships, maintain culture and establish social identity. Human beings are social animals, as we all know. Language is that one key factor that actually makes this social function or social being more stronger, because the more we communicate is when we become more social as people. So social functions is what help us establish a social identity. Next is the directive function. It is used to instruct, request or persuade others. Directive function or also something like giving directions. You want something from someone, you need someone's help, you want to tell something to someone, or you want to persuade, or you want to make sure someone does something for you. You are persuading him to do something for you. So all these comes under the directive function of the language. So in simple sentences, what we can tell, language is something that can help us to communicate ideas, it helps us to express emotions, it helps us to think and reason, it builds social relationships and also gives us instruction or to persuade others. This is actually the brief meaning of all these functions. So lastly, what we have to understand, language is not only a means of communication but also a tool for thought, social interaction and cultural preservation. So this is very important. It is not just a mean of communication but it is also a tool of thought, like how we think, how it influences our thought process, and the social interaction, like how we discuss with others, and also the cultural preservation. It allows human beings to adapt to different contexts like writing, speaking or signing. So to conclude, language is a dynamic multifunctional system that cannot be fully captured by a single definition. Remember this. Its primary role is communication, but it also expresses emotions, shapes thoughts and maintains social bonds. Understanding both its definition and function help us to appreciate the richness of human interaction. So language is not just for talking, it is something that helps us to think, feel and also connect with others. So the next question is discuss the origin and history of words in English language. The English language has a long and interesting history. English language has come from the Britishers. So there was actually a saying before that the sun never sets in the Great Britain because there were a lot of colonies that the British were controlling. That is precisely the reason why English has become a global language and English has become inevitable to most of us. So that is why we can say English language has a long and interesting history. It has borrowed words from many languages over time. English started from a group of Germanic languages. Remember this line, Germanic languages, spoken by tribes like the Anglos, Saxons, Jutes who came to Britain around the 5th century. This early form is called as Old English. Words from this time were simple like house, stone, water. So in the 9th and the 10th centuries, Vikings from Scandinavia invaded England. They spoke Old Norse and some of their words became part of English such as the sky, egg and knife. So by going through the sentence, what we can understand is English language have a lot of influences by a lot of tribes like Anglo-Saxons, Anglo-Saxons as we call them together, Jutes who came to the British in the 5th century. And also it has influence by the Vikings who were in the 9th or the 10th century. Later in 1066, the Norman conquest brought French-speaking rulers to England. This introduced thousands of French words, especially in law, government, art, and food. Words like court, judge, beef, mansion came from French. So, when you're revising this answer, please remember the origins of these words as well. For example, the Anglo-Saxon and Jutes, they spoke Old English and the words they brought was house, stone and water. So why we have to use these specific words? Because it enhances your answer, as I've already told. When the Vikings came, they introduced words like sky, egg and the knife. And the Norman conquest, they had a French influence and the words like court, judge, beef all came from the French influence. By the 15th century, English had changed into Middle English. Writers like Geoffrey Chaucer helped stabilize the language. Geoffrey Chaucer is a very important figure in English literature because it is Chaucer who wrote Canterbury Tales, which is one of the most iconic works when it comes to English literature. So please remember this name. Chaucer is not just for your bachelor's level, he'll be there till you do your master's and sometimes even when you're doing your PhD. So Chaucer is someone who you have to remember. So Chaucer is the one who helped standardize the language. During this time, English borrowed Latin words from scholars and the church, such as school, religion, and doctor. English does have influence of the church because the Britishers did believe in the authority of church. So the language which were spoken by the Britishers will have the influence by the church. The 16th and the 17th century saw the Renaissance. This is a very important period both in terms of literature and also in terms of social reforms in England. So the Renaissance is when many Greek and Latin words were introduced into English. Science and philosophy literature added new words like biology, physics and encyclopedia. As I've already told, Renaissance was a very important part of English society. This is when we had process of science, philosophy, invention and all this happened during this period only when people started to question. There was a new wave of change. Renaissance basically means rebirth. So this period also had an influence on the English language. So when we see the modern times in the society that we are living in, English continue to be borrowing words from all over the world. Words like sushi, pajamas, kangaroo, or any other English words do have their origins from many other countries. Like as we see the examples here, sushi comes from Japanese, pajamas come from Persian, kangaroo comes from Australia, and all this shows that English is a global language and how welcoming the language is. In short, English words have come from Germanic roots, Viking influence, French, Latin, and many other influences. Its history reflects the movements of people, trade, wars, cultural exchange. Today, English is a rich and flexible language because of the mix of origins, making it one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. So today what did we discuss? We discussed four very important questions if we have to revise them. The first question was the concept of onomatopoeia with suitable examples. The second question was the sentences, how they can be transformed into negative and interrogative sentences. The next question was about the definition of language and what are its functions. And then we also discussed about the history and origin of the English language. So to conclude, what we can say is we understood how the language works at a different level, and also we understood the beauty of language. We started with something very simple like the sounds, like words like bang, tick-tock, whoosh, small words, right? But they showed us something amazing. That language does not just tell us things, it makes us experience them. Through onomatopoeia, we just don't understand a sound, we understand and experience the language itself. So that is the power of language. So that is what we learned in onomatopoeia. Then we moved on to the transformation into negative and interrogative sentences. What is sentence transformation is what we understood, where changing a simple sentence into a negative or a question. At first, it feels just like grammar rules, adding not, moving the helping verb, using do or does. But if we look deeper into it, we understand that language can be flexible and how flexible it has to be. With small changes, we can completely change the meaning of it. Like she is coming, she's not coming, is she coming? Like these are the same, this do have the same words, but the meanings are completely different. The meanings are completely changed. Totally different meanings. This is where we see that language is not random, right? It follows a system, and that system helps us express ideas and thoughts very clearly. After that, we also looked into what a language really is. Scholars described it as habits, symbols, signs, systems. Each definition look at one part of the truth, and that tells us something important. Language, I think it is too big or too complex and too human to fit into one single definition. Language, it is a sound, it is a symbol, it is a thought, it is something that completely makes the society. And thinking about its functions, we can say language is not just to share information. Yes, it is there to share information, but it also helps us to express feelings, build relationships, think deeply, or even shape the cultures. Without the language, human beings are incomplete. It connects generations, preserves knowledge, and also allow us to cooperate as a community. Finally, we learned about the history of English words, which was quite interesting. We started with the beginning or the origin of English language from the Germanic tribes to the Vikings, to the French rulers, to Latin, to Greek, and whatnot. English is like a living museum of history. Every word carries a story of migration, war, trade, culture, or even human contact. When we speak English today, we are unknowingly speaking pieces of history, right? Isn't it? I don't think it's an exaggeration when I tell that. So, what does all of this tell us? Language is not just a school of thought, it is not just a school subject, it is not just grammar rules or vocabulary list. Language is one of the most powerful tools humans have ever experienced. It allows us to think, to imagine, to create, to question, to remember, and to connect. It shapes how we see the world and how we share our world with others. The more we understand the language, the better we can understand ourselves. And that is why studying languages and linguistics is not just for the examination, it is for understanding us, that is human life itself. If this video has helped you understand these concepts more clearly, make sure to like our page, follow our channel, share this with a friend who finds linguistics difficult. Let's make learning easier together. See you in the next video. Thank you so much.